Welcome to Rockin' the Love. I'm Robyn.
And I'm Gil, and we're really happy you're here today. We are excited about moving forward, having a good show today. And we just want to take a moment, remind you all to take a second. Be sure you like our page, check our YouTube page out, subscribe to that. Keep up with us because we want to try to keep up with you.
That was very jazzy. That was spiffy. It was as if we say that all the time.
Aha.
But it's true. We do want to keep up with you. But we're so excited to have you here today that we are going to skip a few things and so we can add a few things because we just love our guest and what he's doing, and we want to share that with you. But before we do, here's the good news. The good news of the week.
You go. You're first today.
My good news was we went to New Mexico, and it was fun.
It was very much fun. We had a great time, and we learned a lot about Albuquerque. We discovered that there's greenery there. We did not know this before. Somehow, when we went there a couple months ago, it had a very different appearance, but it was wonderful. It was great weather. We had a good time. All the people were wonderful. And so
it was very much like an alternate universe, though, I have to say, because I'm a city girl. I'm a California girl,
really?
Like through and through. And not that I can't hang out other places. I love hanging out other places, other countries, other ways of life. But to think about moving somewhere else is a little different. So it was very interesting, and we went to a minor league baseball game, which is very exciting there. Like the stadium fills up, and it's very different. Everyone is so excited, and all the hometown people are, they've all got things to do. One's throwing out a ball, and one's doing some other kind of promotion, and everybody's getting extra T-shirts and prizes and games, and it was just like a really alternate universe. Like I was sitting in the stands, and being from Los Angeles, I'm thinking, wow, I like it a whole lot more when the camera's on like Ben and J-Lo. Like all of a sudden though, it was about like everybody. And it was cute. It was fun. It was like, I felt like I was, in somebody like in a Norman Rockwell painting or something. So it was just interesting. It was just interesting to watch how different life can be.
But how much fun it is when everyone's a part of it. So, and that's just kind of the feeling there. Everybody's a part of everything. Even the rain that we got during the game. That was fun.
The thunderstorms and the lightning. Yeah. So we're not going to hang out a long time because if you're on our mailing list, we have something very special happening today. And some of you got a preview of that. And we actually decided that we are going to share that on the screen instead of trying to do little clips. So we're going to be trying all kinds of new things today and new technology. And we know it's going to work perfectly. Hold the vision out there for us. And so we want to get to that. Is there anything else we need to say before we go to a break?
Well, we just want to let you know that we have a very excellent guest and dear friend who will be on. So, and we're excited. And we're excited because this is Pride Month, and that's what we've been talking about, various aspects of that. And today's or this week's show is about passion, power, and possibility. And we chose that because that's what it is all about. It's about well, that's what our guest is all about, is about passion. And from that comes power, and then the possibility to really create relationships and have people be in full relationship. And so that's what we're excited about today.
And I would say our guest is about possibility. I know you said that, but I would say I would put that first, even because I just think his heart is so big that he believes anything's possible and works super hard to get there. So we're going to end up introducing him before going to break if we keep talking about him. So we're going to go to break, and we'll see you right back here after you get a snack or something, because you're going to want to sit through this whole thing. Right back here on New Thought Media Network.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferlin Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a super special thank you to Dr. Tracy Brown, RSCP. Thanks for being a super donor. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Robyn.
And I'm Gil, and you are with us here on this week's Rockin' the Love.
Yes, where we're so excited because our guest today is Jeffrey Solomon. Jeffrey has a long bio, longer than you can imagine. So I'm just going to take out a few of the snippets of things that he's proud of and that make him who he is. So he's the co-founder of Houses on the Moon Theater Company, and he's also a playwright, a director, a teacher, a father. He has taught storytelling workshops with underserved communities and beyond. He is co-curating and directing a story-based theater project, or has done this project called Transformations, which is true stories about gender identity and family and gun country, true stories from people whose lives have been touched by guns. Jeff's has a couple of one-man shows, and one is called The Santa Closet, and this play has debuted off Broadway at the Kirk Theater and on Theater Row, and won Best of the Columbus National Gay and Lesbian Theater Festival. His other solo play, Mother Son, has had acclaim runs all over the world, in Australia, in the UK, in New York, California, everywhere. And it's also been presented as an educational and support tool around LGBTQ+ and human rights issues in India, Sri Lanka, and the Philippines. Jeff has also been an Emmy-nominated television writer, and he is also a Moth Grand Slam champion. And beyond all of that, I can tell you that he's one of the most courageous and honest people I know. I've had the honor of working with him, and he's a creative genius with a heart of gold. And it's just a joy to collaborate with him and have him in our lives. So welcome, Jeffrey Solomon.
Oh my God, what an introduction. That was better than my mother would do. Hi.
So we're so happy to have you here with us today, and so excited about this project. We turned it on thinking we'd listen to a few minutes to make sure we were familiar, and we were like, just swept into the world that you create.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's just so much genuine you showing up in there, and your not just you showing up, but your genuine desire to invite other people into the conversation, to know what other people are feeling and hearing and doing and feeling and being about, while at the same time sharing from your heart, and I just really sense that in all the different stuff that I've seen you do.
Thanks.
He's stunned.
Thank you.
Are you still back with your introduction?
No more praise. I have to work on that. So can I tell you a little bit more about the project?
Yes.
So I founded a theater company called Houses on the Moon Theater Company in New York, but I currently live in Los Angeles. And about 14 years ago, I got hooked on first-person true storytelling through the Moth, going to Moth Story Slams. And I just found it to be the most amazing form, like so primal, simple, but so human. And so I kind of brought that form into our theater work. We work with many communities and create works dealing with untold stories and real life and vital social issues. And I just found that first person storytelling was like so empowering as a way to make sense of one's life. A project, we did many projects that started with storytelling, but one that I'm going to talk about today and that I'm really excited about is called the Q Story Stream. So I developed a friendship with a man named Sachin Jain in India. And I performed my solo play, Their Mother Son, which is inspired by my coming out story in India, and developed this lovely friendship with Sachin, who runs the largest gay men's group there called Gay Bombay in the city of Mumbai. And we just got to thinking, how could we work together? And we came up with a project kind of inspired by our friendship, because we swapped so many stories about, about us and about our lives and about being gay. And in a sense, you could argue India was maybe 15 years behind the US in terms of some of the progress on LGBT issues. And then in some areas they were ahead. But kind of sharing coming out stories and, just stories about life with him and comparing universal truths and then things that were culturally different was just so moving. And it made me feel like I was part of a mighty army instead of a small minority. And so we birthed this project called Q Story Stream. I worked with a group of storytellers, LGBT plus storytellers here in Los Angeles, and Sachin had another group in Mumbai, India. And we workshopped separately in our local locations and then together using the digital tools to connect. And we had live shows in both India, in Mumbai, India, and Los Angeles that combined stories from both continents, some on video, some live, and then live conversations on Skype. And it was just mind blowing. So this is going to become a full podcast. We're working on the pilot episode now with the group All Out, which is an international LGBTQ human rights group. And I'm really excited about that. But the seeds for that project started here. I told a story that I first told at the Moth. I actually brought into the Q Story creative process to inspire stories from the Indian cohort, which we got. So we're gonna share both with you. First comes my story, which is about teaching, and then Sachin listened to that and wrote his own story about teaching. So I think that's all the setup we need, right?
I think so. So enjoy.
And that is because
that's
I'm
not
always just one.
Oh, sorry, that's too.
Diss,
that's not the
one
beginning.
Snap, one insult away from time travel.
That's not the beginning.
We got to roll it back.
Part of the night where I know I look to you for that. Where Jeffrey Solomon's going to come up.
When the call came, I should have said no, because teaching in a junior high school is a very, very bad idea for me. And that is because I am always just one diss, one snap, one insult away from time travel, from being sucked into the wormhole and instantly transported back to that tender and terrible time called junior high. But I needed the money, and so off to the ass end of Staten Island I went to teach conflict resolution through drama to 7th graders. My class was made up of, the place in Staten Island is the very end. It's called Tottenville. Are you familiar with Tottenville? Yeah, all right. So my class was 24 tough little Italian boys with spiked gelled hair. And one very badass little black girl because she had to be named Chantel. And one very effeminate little gay boy named Franklin Sakalosi. So one day my teaching partner and I, Lori, were picking up the room after class, and Franklin stayed to help us because he's a sweet kid. And he said to us, hey you guys, how are you doing today? And I said, well, I'm good. Franklin, how are you? And he said, oh, all right, I guess. I said, well, what's wrong, Franklin? He said, well, the other kids are always calling me names and teasing me, and if I tell my mother or the teacher, it just gets worse. What should I do? I let Lori field that one because of my junior high school related post-traumatic stress disorder. And she said to him, well, when someone is calling me names or saying something mean to me, I just close my eyes and I imagine I'm surrounded in a bubble of pure white light. And all the negativity that they're sending my way, it just gets absorbed by my bubble and transformed into pure love, which is the color of gold, and it just shoots right back at them. And Franklin, it will change them, I promise you. That is the worst advice I have ever heard, and I vow that I'm gonna try to help Franklin. The very next day, Chantel started laying into Franklin, and she said, yo, that kid's a faggot. I hate that kid, faggot. And I said, okay, Chantel, you need to come with me. And I left Lori with the class, and we sat face to face in a classroom. And I said, you know, Chantel, when you use that word, the F-A-G-G-O-T word, that's a slur. It's like a hateful word you use for any group of people, like the N-word. And, you know, when you use that word, you don't know who's around you. There could be people who have gay family, or, you know, there might be gay students. And she said, there's no gay kids in this school. And I said, well, no, there could be. And she said, oh, please, this is Tottenville. There is no gay kids in this school. And I said, all right, well, there might be teachers. What about teachers? And she said, there's no gay teachers in this school. And I said, no, really, there could be. And I started breaking a sweat, and my heart was beating. And Chantel said, where? Where are the gay teachers at? And I took a deep breath and I said, well, me. I'm gay, and when you use those kind of words, it really hurts. And she stopped and she thought about it, and she said, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. I won't say it again. And I said, wow, this is what we called in education a teachable moment, and I thought I had handled that beautifully. Just then, Sal, a great big lug of a kid, walked by the open door with a bathroom pass in his hand. And Chantel jumps up out of her chair and she says, yo, Sal, Jeff is gay! and Sal gets this incredibly wounded look on his face, and he's like, yo, don't say that, that's mean. And she said, no, Sal, it's true, Jeff is gay. He just told me, right, Jeff? And then Sal said, yo, Jeff, yo, is that true, Jeff? Are you gay, Jeff? And I said, that was a private conversation between Chantel and I. And just then the bell rang. I was saved by the bell. But moments later, I am mobbed in the hallway by 24-year-old frantic pre-adolescents reeking of cheap cologne and hormones, screaming in my face, "Yo, Jeff! Jeff! Are you gay, Jeff? Jeff! Jeff! Are you gay? Oh, man! Are you gay? Are you gay?" And there was a giant sucking sound as I fell into the wormhole. I have many justifications about why I denied being gay that day to those boys. Maybe the expected negative reaction of their parents or the administration or my boss. But the truth is that the one responsible was that 7th grader still sitting inside of me, swathed in velour and corduroy and surrounded on all sides by cruelty. Not that my denials mattered. After that, I was known as that gay teacher. And then one day, the class laughed for half an hour about a joke I was not in on until Franklin kindly tapped me on the shoulder and pointed to the board where they had written Mr. Faggot in colored chalk. Picking up the room that day, I was teaching alone, and Franklin lingered to help me pick up, and he said to me, "So, how you doing, Jeff?" And I said, "All right." And he said, "Rough day?" And I said, yeah, Franklin, it was a pretty rough day. And he said, "Well, you know what you should do? Imagine like you're surrounded in a bubble of pure white light. And anything that they say that's mean or negative, it just gets absorbed by a bubble and transformed into love." I did it, Jeff. It works. It really works. Thank you.
Wow. Incredible. What a great story. And then clearly the delivery is superb.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot.
That's gotta. Does it bring stuff up for you when you see it, or are you just so?
Well, I think that's one of the things that's special about making art and telling stories is I don't know that this could have just been something in my past that is stressful or even painful that I could have viewed as a moral failing even for not going all the way with it. But to be able to make art out of one's experiences and to put them in that form and to celebrate, the humanity of some of the people in the story and just to print it like a photo, to put it in the album, the story album. It's meaningful, because that I guess, that those stories of falling short are just important as the clear victories.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, and we still, we talk about this all the time as artists, that we never really know who we affect and how we affect them anyway. So this story looks this way to you now.
Yeah.
And, to those junior high kids when they become high school kids or adults or grownups, and remember those moments, we don't know what they're taking away really. Welcome, John. John says awesome. And I know John may have heard it before because I actually sent a link. So yeah, it's so moving. It's so moving.
Why is it important that, for you to tell these stories? Particularly to people like, me who's not in the gay community or any other,
Well, I was in public school myself in the 70s and 80s. And there just was no discussion of LGBTQ lives or people and homophobia was rampant. And you know, this story actually happened quite a while ago, 2004, and certainly there wasn't too much discussion going on in Staten Island at the time. And so I don't know, it is healing to like be able to tell stories you know, about that time, and to, you know, I as an educator, I walked into the room with a lot of fear about like how I would be perceived. Do I, you know, do I have an agenda? How will the teachers feel? How will the parents feel? And you know, the really tragic part of this is I felt like, in a way, and I can't speak for the whole country, but I feel like the society was getting very good about being inclusive and not making kids who may be LGBTQ or questioning or have family members feel marginalized, and that somehow your life is not worthy of discussion. And of course, we're looking at a raft of legislation in Florida and other places to make it untenable to have these discussions in school, which is just, I can't, I mean, I guess you could say this about a lot of, you know, issues, you know, looking at Roe versus Wade too, but I just can't believe we're taking this giant leap backwards, and that teachers would have to ask themselves again, like what I was asking myself, is it appropriate for me to, you know, to be out and to have these discussions in the classroom? And they're trying to make it so that it's, you know, so that it's problematic. So I guess there's a, you know, I strongly believe that we must have these conversations with kids, you know, to help them navigate the diverse world we live in, and not just about LGBTQ, but about, you know, race and ethnicity, religion, all of it, you know. It's our duty as adults and educators.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the brilliant things about the work that you've done, and that I've done some with you, is that, I mean, like you said, that was 2004. So in some ways, it is very cutting edge, you know. I mean, it's easy to see where you're, you know, debating about where do you toe the line, where do you, do you tell all to the seventh grader, or do you, you know, preserve your job? But I think it's so important, because it really is. And you know this as well as I do, Jeffrey, that so many times when you've worked with kids, you see them 10 years later, 15 years later, and they tell you what they got from you.
Yeah.
And I know that they have gotten so much from the work that you've done.
Can I do a quick plug? So this story found its way into the Houses on the Moon podcast. There's one season. That was what our theater company did, and what I was involved in personally, when there was no way to do live theater, but it was a really exciting pivot. So if you search for Houses on the Moon podcast in any of your major podcast platforms, be that Google or Apple or Amazon, or even just, there's a website for the Houses on the Moon podcast too. If you search for that in Google, you'll find this story, a version of the one you're about to hear from India, and then at least 3 more stories from the Q Story Project, which is the one I was talking about today, a cross-cultural LGBTQ story sharing project. And plus, there's great true stories from a lot of the other Houses projects. The one on gender identity in children, transformation, that Robyn mentioned, from Gun Country, and another project called Shared Sentences about the experience of people with incarcerated loved ones. There's 8, I believe there's 8 episodes in total. So love you to check out the Houses on the Moon podcast. And if you like it, leave a nice review on Apple Podcasts for us.
And John is saying it's awesome to see a gay mention the arts, telling story and being foundational in creating our part of collective culture. Amen. Amen. So tell us a little bit about the next thing we're going to see.
Well, that's actually a great segue that John just gave us. So, as I mentioned, I took this story into a global workshop with a cohort here in LA, and then my friend Sachin had another in India. And so, but this one started it. I gave this story to Sachin, and I said, "What story do you have that relates to this story?" And out came this amazing story. And that I just find so moving and so inspiring. And I guess just for background, and he'll cover some of this, but basically, and you're going to have to forgive me because I don't have the dates on me, but India, like many former British colonies, when they were colonized by the British, had these leftover imperial laws barring homosexuality and making it illegal. So it was illegal in India. And then in Delhi, a certain part of India, they decriminalized homosexuality, in part from the work of Sachin and another activist there. And that was a huge victory. And then they recriminalized nationally. So it was kind of like what happened with Prop 8 in California. Yay, we can marry. No, you can't. Yes, we can. No, you can't. So they went through that whole roller coaster. Sachin's a teacher. He teaches Spanish in India. And this is about the story that this case was coming back before the Supreme Court on the day he was teaching Spanish to 11th and 12th graders.
Great. Thanks.
Oh, no sound. There's no audio. Do you guys hear audio? I don't hear audio.
We're working on that.
Oh, okay.
So thank you everyone for your patience. We threw these clips on our producer and we're just working out the kinks.
Learning as we go.
It's so I hate it when it works before in the test and then does it in the real thing. So what else are you working on? What's next? It's so interesting that you mentioned the one the one about incarcerated family members.
Yeah. So Emily is the current artistic director of Houses in the Moon Theater Company, and she founded the company with me back in 2001. And she's been she started again with a storytelling group of folks who wanted to talk about incarceration of loved ones. And so one of those stories is on there, and then that gave birth to a whole play called Shared Sentences, which will premiere in the fall off Broadway. And it's kind of inspired by that first group of people that did the storytelling workshops. And it's about a support group based on a real support group called Prison Families Anonymous, of folks who meet to talk about the experience of incarceration of their loved ones.
Wow.
That's
and actually the story on the Houses on the Moon podcast, it's called Zoo Data with a capital Z. And it's a beautiful story because she's talking about multi-generational incarceration, of both parent and romantic partner, and also now being a mother, and it's a beautiful story.
Wow, you have to come back and tell us about that one. How are we doing, Michael? No, not okay.
No.
Well, so I can just give you a preview of his story myself. So I hope you'll actually, if you search for Houses on the Moon podcast, it's the episode called, it's number 7. It's called Missives from the Wormhole, which is my story, followed immediately by Sachin's story, which is called Por versus Para. The Spanish Por versus Para. So yeah, check it out. So, but it's the day the High Court in India, they have a Supreme Court like our own, is deciding whether or not to decriminalize homosexuality, and he's watching his stealing looks at his phone and waiting for that verdict, and is on pins and needles.
I'm still hopeful we're gonna get it.
What's that?
I'm still hopeful we're gonna get it.
Okay. Okay. So I shouldn't give you all the details. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I shouldn't give you the main takeaway.
But what I did find fascinating, and you can speak to this a little bit, is just listening to them back to back, like just really the global experience, because we think about our experience here, I should say, I think about what's in front of me a lot of the time, and I don't, think about it in terms of it being different and universal and the same and not the same, and all of those things. So you must have found a lot of interesting similarities and differences in there. Was there anything that really surprised you?
No, I mean, of course, and I'm by no means an expert, but many Indian folks are expected to move from their parents' house and marry, and that's when they leave the house. So I think that's changing some, but I think probably folks with more means have more of an opportunity to, to live their gender identity and sexuality than folks with less means. So that was just that was interesting. I mean, culturally, but I think things are changing. Like you're starting to see parents groups, support groups like PFLAG there. I know Sachin runs one in Mumbai. There's a different understanding about gender identity. Transgender people are recognized legally as a third gender. So in that respect, I think they're kind of way ahead of us. So that was actually fascinating. And, and even we have an age difference, Sachin and I. am 55 and he's at least 10 years younger than me. And how he responded to this issue in the classroom was different than I did. Some of that is just that it was a slightly different era. And some of that, again, that he's a younger person. And, some of that is just the difference in people. But it was also interesting to know that we totally can't even generalize about anyone's story, that each story is so completely unique, and that we have just as much to learn from these Indian LGBTQ stories as they do from us. That like someone like Gandhi, that message traveled to us, and Gandhi was inspired by King, and look at the Me Too movement and the way in which that's gone like fire, around the country. That I don't know, that there's a real necessity to hear global stories, that we don't live in a vacuum.
I think that the incredible part about that is that's we sometimes forget that even though you're telling this very unique particular story to you or to someone else's experience or some group's experience that's different, there's that humanity in it that we all relate to, whatever the story is. It's a universal story of how we come to be ourselves, to be honest with ourselves, to be honest with others, to ask other people to do the right thing when they aren't necessarily feeling like doing that, and also to have those places where some things affect my life a lot more than they affect someone else's, and to realize, oh, everybody has that, it may not be my thing, but it's there.
Yeah. That's a great comment. I mean, the ability to self-actualize, it's what I love about this whole storytelling format, because you're making meaning and interpreting your own life.
Yeah. Well, let's see. It looks like we're going to try again. So again, if you're just joining us, Jeffrey, tee it up just with a sentence or two.
Oh, okay. This is Sachin Jain from Mumbai, India, telling a story about teaching Spanish on the day the Indian High Court was considering whether or not to decriminalize homosexuality nationally.
Thanks.
No sound.
All right. So.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the technical way of live. So that's
but it's great. So everybody, We're going to put the banner up again where you can go and find the podcast. And
yeah, and so that'll be the Houses on the Moon website. You can certainly find it that way. But any of you who listen to podcasts, if you search for Houses on the Moon podcast, you can find it on all major podcast platforms. And you'll find Sachin's story there. So just to clarify, this Q story was featured as part of the season 1 of Houses on the Moon podcast, and it spawned a spinoff, which it will just be called Q Story, but you can find it in the same. It'll come out in the House's feed. So if you subscribe to our podcast, when Q Story is ready, which will be global stories from all around the world of LGBT folks, you'll be able to receive that. So please subscribe. I wanted to mention, so the pilot episode, I've been working with some folks in Ghana, again, using digital tools. And they're encountering one of the most virulently vicious and homophobic bills anywhere in the world right now that's pending in their parliament, which would make homosexuality punishable for 10 years. Make it illegal for even any ally to support an LGBT person or to talk about it in the schools. It's illegal to have any public same-sex, just holding the hand of one's loved one. It's a really vicious bill. And last year, they opened the first ever LGBT center in Ghana, and that was shut down immediately by the police. So they're really going through it there, and could use our support. But at the same time, what was so interesting, because again, we're talking about this cross-cultural conversation, I think it would be so easy for me to come in as someone from the US and, thinking like, we're helping you and we're so far advanced.
Oh, yeah.
But we're so not. I mean, well, first of all, two things, since
Jeff, we're going to try it one more time. Sorry. Sorry. We believe. Everybody put your mojo there.
Well, he's stalking, but we're not hearing him.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody. We had it working before. Michael has given it his best shot. But it's a good tease, because I'll tell you, I know you're in the middle of a sentence, Jeff, but that story to me was so moving. And I don't know, like just the way he tells it, and you can just feel the joy. You can feel, and you can, like you said, it may be because it's a different time, because he's younger, because whatever, but you could feel all the support. And that was like so amazing. So finish your sentence. I'm sorry.
So what I wanted to mention about what's going on in Ghana is the bill that they're facing now was hatched by the U.S. Religious right, the World Family of Congress, the World Congress of Families. Brian Brown is the executive director who used to run National Organization for Marriage. So these folks lost the battle here in the U.S., and they've been exporting homophobia and funds wholesale to places like the Republic of Georgia, to Uganda, to Ghana. So the seeds of this bill were born in a U.S.-sponsored conference by that organization, the World Congress of Families, and a couple of other organizations. They held a big conference and spread so many vicious lies about LGBTQ people, about the threat that they pose. And the bill came out right after that conference. So I guess what I wanted to say is, one is, this is in part very much a U.S. problem, that these hate mongers can do what they do and fund what they fund. And two, unfortunately, the bill they're facing in Ghana, like we can see elements of that in these anti-LGBT "Don't Say Gay" bills that are happening here in the U.S. So there's a schizophrenia to what's going on here. Like the U.S. State Department now, it's back with Biden and is friendly to queer folks again. But back at home, if anyone looks what's going on, it's just a hodgepodge of rights all over the country. And in some places, the community is under a bigger threat, particularly transgender youth, than they have ever been.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it was really interesting having that global conversation and seeing the ways in which some things are sadly right now the same. That it's easy, the easiest boogeyman is queer folks and specifically transgender youth globally.
Well, something I learned recently was that I don't know all the particulars, but what struck me was Pride was recognized by, I believe, Clinton originally, the first
Glendale Memorial.
And either I got it right or wrong. I'm not sure which one that meant. But that it went through and listed each every time it was recognized by all of the Democratic presidents, and it was not recognized when the Republicans were in office.
Yeah,
officially.
Yeah,
you know? and I just went, oh my God, I mean, how? Anyway, I didn't know that. I didn't know how on the one hand how subtle the stuff is, and then on the other hand how totally willing to just be, we don't care. We're not interested in supporting this at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a huge difference, unfortunately, with the agenda of administrations.
Yeah.
So
you talked a bit about what you've learned from doing this, about how what's going on in other countries, and what just to reiterate, I didn't realize how big the footprint is, like in these countries that have homophobic legislation. The religious right is working very hard because like I said, in many ways they feel they've lost the battle here. So they're off to places like Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, and especially in Africa and in Asia. So I don't know. I don't even know what the answer is, but I wish as a U.S. citizen I had something to put a check on the power of these organizations promoting hate in our. Well, I think part of it is what you're doing, and that's calling it out.
Yeah.
And we all have to do that from time to time. We have to be honest about what's going on. And I hadn't heard from some of those groups in a while, very much. And yet we see the stuff that's coming out here, and that they're maintaining their momentum by doing stuff around the world.
Well, like what you were saying about January 6th stuff.
Oh yeah. The whole January 6th hearing business, and listening to how as long as there wasn't someone to call it out, everybody was willing to play, and they were willing to really go out there and do their thing and lie about anything, and continue to keep telling a lie that was totally unsustainable. And they knew. And that's basically what you have in these various other things, is the same kind of idea. It's people creating a lie and then telling it over and over again.
And John has a question. I'm going to ask it. Do you feel isolation has been lifted through social media and the arts?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely through social media. I mean, this whole thing with the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. I actually attended the ILGO World Conference here in Long Beach, and this is a member organization. It's kind of like the Queer UN. There's some 2,000 LGBTQ human rights groups from all over the world come to this thing, and it's in a different city every 2 years. The folks from It Gets Better had said that the demand for their work has like skyrocketed, especially in these states where they're suddenly trying to shut out this conversation in the schools and the libraries. Where that genie's out of the bottle. You can't you can't people from hearing about the stories that they need to feed their souls. You cannot make people invisible. It's increasingly harder. And even in these countries in the middle of these very active national LGBTQ human rights groups, like young people are coming out and they're posting and they're telling their stories. And that's very powerful, because lies, you can't get away with the lie forever if people have a way to tell and share their stories.
Eventually it comes out. Something I've noticed, and that is that really, and I'm wondering about your observation, like your story was told from the perspective of 2004, but what I've seen with kids right now is that the kids are the ones who are really carrying the torch to be honest and to talk more and to explore their own feelings about themselves and all of that. I'm hearing it in youth groups and at schools, and I don't know how any legislation is going to, from junior high, they're not going to stop anybody from talking about whatever they want. So, but it seems to me like there's a way in which that is really being carried forward by the younger generation at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very inspired to look what younger people are doing, particularly younger activists. In these places, I'm talking about where the threat can be very real. I think what's interesting too, that the fact that there is information now, what I've been hearing from folks that I'm working with is like, the coming out stories, which are not necessarily the ones that you would expect, or even they would have expected. Like, I'm going to kick you out of my house, I'm going to disown you. No, it's more like, how can we change the church? How, right. How can we change society? Like they would like to use this as a wedge to divide people from their families. But I don't know. I think which will happen, sadly, but I think a lot of people will rise to the occasion and not let that happen. And I think a lot of it is that people are emboldened to not stay silent and to tell their stories.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And it's so great that they have people that are out there ushering them into that, Jeffrey. And I can't believe our time is gone and that we didn't even show the other video. And I just want to share that Linda's out there and she is saying, she was asking for the audio again, but she said it's such a great story. She also listened to it previously. So I just really encourage everyone to take, 7 minutes out of your life and go listen to the other half of the story, because it's just, it's worth it.
Sachin's story is in episode 7, por versus para.
Yeah, por versus para. So Linda says, Jeff, I thank you for your wonderful story. With just a few words, I fell in love with young Franklin. I hope he is thriving as life has moved forward in the U.S. Beautiful, Linda. Thank you. Yeah. And again, I have been fortunate enough to do this kind of work with Jeffrey. And I can tell you there are many lives moving forward because of the work that Jeffrey does in the world. So, on behalf of all of those kids in the classrooms you've touched over way too many years to mention, I was thinking when you were saying about, the young people doing the work, I was like, hey, that was us. Hey, we were them ones. We just kept doing it. So I want to thank you. And on behalf of our listeners and ourselves, we will be giving a small donation to Houses on the Moon. So for you to continue work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, it's our pleasure and honor.
Yes. And will you come back and share new shows and talk about?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. This was so much fun. Thanks.
Well, and I look forward to time to have you on and talk about, you know, more about being in relationship with your son and
Oh.
being in relationship with, you know, because you and Bill are such great parents, you know, and there's all of that to be. I mean, yeah, I mean, your kid's still alive, right? But I think that's an aspect of you in this whole discussion that people didn't necessarily know, and I just wanted to highlight that. So,
Well, and I'll tell you, Jeffrey's son Leo, who's now 9 years old, he actually was an inspiration for one of the segments in this podcast that we haven't done yet, and showing little young kids that are rocking the love in the world. Because I was so inspired when he was doing his mock podcast with you. So
yeah,
there are kids everywhere, and you know, doing it. So, what do you want to say?
Oh no, yeah, he started that, and I have to light a flame and encourage it because it was really nice. It was really good.
All right. So if you have been moved today, we would appreciate giving to the network, going to newthoughtmedianetwork.org and dropping a little donation in and just sharing the love, because that's what we're here to do. So everybody have a great week, and please, it's imperative that you rock the love out there.
and a special shout out to Jeffrey and Houses on the Moon and Sachin and all of the great work you guys are doing, working together, bringing forth good stories.
Yes. And we'll see you next week with our guest, Doug Myers, who will be here to tell us a little bit more about Pride and share some experiences as well. Okay. We love you, and we'll see you next week.